Hello, Barbara. Are you well? Oh, jolly good. Yes, yes. Put me through to the PM, will you? Oh, very good. Thank you. Ah, Harold, how you doing? Sorry, you said Prime Minister, how you doing? Very good. We're very well here in the Treasury. Things are looking a bit more messy than I thought it would. It's not what I expect, this Treasury, but anyway. Listen, I've come up with an idea on how we can fix the economy. I've got papers everywhere which will tell us how to do this, but do bear with me. So, obviously we're Labour, yes? And we have to fool our voters, think the working class, you know, we can talk like this in private, but well, you know, in public, that's talk like this, you know. Aye, I can keep that up. Yes, right, but I live in private, I can use a proper voice. Anyway, here's the plan. So we're going to put a super tax in, that'll get the Labour voters all riled up, won't it? Yes, think we're taxing the rich, but we won't tax the royals, the Queen, God bless that woman. Anyway, here's what we're going to do. There'll be 1 for you, 19 for us. That's the 1 for the taxpayer, that is, and we'll take 19. So we'll have a super tax, 95%, yeah? Right, okay, and here's what we'll do as well. If that's not enough, if those peasants, those subjects, whatever the correct term is we're using has, what we'll do, if they try and drive a car, well, we'll tax the street. If they try and walk, well, we'll tax their feet. If they get too cold, well, we'll tax the heat. They don't need that. They can go and live in a hot country if they want heat. What else can we do? Well, if they want to sit down because they're feeling old and tired, well, we'll tax the seats. I mean, I'm sat down right now, but it won't apply to us, you know. But yes, if that doesn't go far enough, well, we can go further if we really like to. Because if they need to use their hands, and why would they need to use their hands? Well, we'll tax their hands, you know, if they don't need to use their hands, all that jazz. If they try and pant, you know what I mean by a good old pant, don't you? That kind of thing. Well, we'll tax their pants, yeah? If they try and wipe their feet, well, we'll tax the mat. If they wave a white flag, that's unacceptable. The Tory party wouldn't allow that, and neither can we. Yes, we'll tax the flags. Yes, and I tell you what else. It's a bit undesirable. There's too many fat people in this country. Yes. No, we're not going to do anything to lose the weight. We'll just tax the fat. That's a good idea. If we tax the fat, if they get too fat and they want to pay the tax, well, they can beg it off elsewhere, to be honest. Yeah. Oh, I know. We'll send them somewhere else. I don't know. We'll send them to America or something like that, you know. Oh, dear. So fat bastards, aren't they? Anyway, yes. Am I on the public speaking rounds on the radio tomorrow? Well, I don't know what he had. I'll put the proper voice back on. Right, okay. We'll get one side. Right, okay. Right, well, don't you worry, because I'm the tax man. Yeah, hi. Yes, it's very good. I'm a very good actor. Yeah. Right, okay. Toodles, Harold. Okay, watch how you go. We'll implement that plan, don't worry. Okay, bye. Well, I better do the posh voice. That is the posh voice, the working class voice, you know. Welcome back to Revolver In-Depth. Oh dear, that wasn't very good. Right, welcome to Revolver In-Depth. This is episode 1, Taxman. I'm the Taxman. So last year, I did a series called The White Album In Depth, where I covered all 30 tracks on the White Album, plus Hey Jude, and the songs that didn't make the album. And I really enjoyed doing that series, and since I finished doing it last July, I've been telling people when they've asked, and myself to be honest, that the next thing I would do would be Revolver, and it's taken me a little while, but here we are, we're off again with a new series, Revolver In Depth. Basically, it's the same thing, we'll go across all 14 tracks, so there'll be 14 episodes, looking at each track on the album. We'll take an in-depth look, we'll talk about the recording sessions, what it's about, what I think of the song. So yeah, we'll do the 14 tracks, plus we will do Paperback Writer and Rain. So there should be, if my maths is correct, which I'm not stupid, it'll be 16 episodes. I don't think there's anything that was recorded in these sessions that then came along later. Anyway, I digress, so that's what we're going to be doing here. Now before we get properly going here, can I just say, if you're going to listen to Revolver in this day and age, there are 2 ways to do it now. You can either listen to the original mono mixes, nothing wrong with that, or if you're going to listen to a stereo mix, then you need to go with the 2022 remix, because the original stereo mix of Revolver is terrible. It is atrociously bad. I mean, Taxman through headphones is really hard going. There's absolutely no reason, as far as I can tell now, to listen to the original stereo mixes of Revolver. Either listen to the Giles Martin remix or listen to the mono versions. Both of them are now on streaming services, so if you still listen to Revolver and it's the one on streaming, it says remastered 2009, then you need your head looking at basically. Listen to the remix, the Super Deluxe Edition. listen to the mono mix, whatever, I don't care, just don't listen to that stupid stereo mix. So before we go any further here, I feel I should say, since this is the first episode, a little bit about Revolver. I love Revolver. I wouldn't be doing this series if I didn't. Last year I said the White Album was my favourite Beatles album. At the minute it's Revolver because it's brilliant. You play this album to a 17-year-old or a 14-year-old or whatever, and they're not gonna hate it. It's gonna shape their life. And you know, one of the important things to bear in mind as well at this point was John and George were both taking acid, whereas Paul wasn't. So Paul's songs on this album are quite different to the experimental sides of John and George's songs, but we'll cover all that as we go further into this series. But one thing I will say is if I did this video when I was 15, I'd have come on here saying that John and George's stuff's great, Paul's a bit boring. But now, here I am at 27, it's the age all the rock stars start dying, here I am now saying that I actually think Paul's stuff on this album is the best. This is some of the best Paul McCartney music ever on this album, but we'll cover all that in videos about those songs. This is a George video, this one. Alright, Harry Cliff. And it was originally had a different sort of Revolver-like cover with, yeah, it's hard to explain it. If I remember, I'll show you a picture of it. But it wasn't a great original cover, this album. Thankfully, the cover got changed to artwork designed by Klaus Forman. To me, this is probably the best Beatles album cover. I love this cover, even though I've got the Sgt. Pepper cover framed there. I haven't got a Revolver one framed, but yeah. Anyway, to begin with here in the first episode, believe it or not, we are starting with the opening track on the album, which is a Harry song. It's the only Beatles album, Revolver, that opened with a Harry song. So here we go, let's have a look at Taxman. In June 1965, Prime Minister Harold Wilson made an unprecedented move by awarding all four Beatles an MBE each for their contribution to the national economy. Now, since the band had had their international break the previous year in 1964, the British pop market had exploded. Britain was now the pop capital of the world, and this really impacted the economy. All these records being pressed, made in Britain, were now being exported all around the world. It was also affecting British tourism. It was bringing people in because who are these boys from Liverpool? Let's go and have a look at Liverpool. What's going on in London? Let's go and see this scene in London. The fashion scene as well, the whole swinging 60s thing. This all kind of started with the Beatles, and it was all centred here in Britain. So the national economy had a huge boom in the 60s because of the Beatles. So the government thought, well, we'll give them an MBE to thank them. Now, these awards were not without controversy because up until this point, MBEs had only ever really been given to people who had served in the army. They hadn't been given at this point to any pop star, so this was breaking a precedent really. And yeah, a lot of people, particularly the older generations, were not happy about this. I mean, there were people who had fought and died for, well, not died, but they'd fought for their country, and their comrades had died beside them, and they'd been awarded MBEs for that, and the Beatles had been given it for singing She Loves You and stuff like that. Now, the opposition party at the time, the Tory party, they were not happy either. They were also saying that pop stars should not be getting this. They were outraged. But there's a lot of reasons why you could argue that Harold Wilson did it. The devil in me would think with him being a politician, he's maybe thought, there's a huge youth vote there. If I get the Beatles on side, well, it'll help me. It'll help me get the youth on side and they'll come and vote for me. So maybe that kind of worked a little bit because not long after these MBEs were awarded, there was a general election and Harold Wilson got quite a big majority. So yeah, maybe that did help him a little bit. So fast forward now to April 1966, and you would think that the four Beatles, having been awarded MBEs for their contribution to the national economy, would be four very wealthy individuals. But that wasn't the case. An accountancy firm informed the band at the time that two of them were on the verge of bankruptcy and the other two weren't far behind. Now, we don't know which one was which, but if I had to guess, I would say it was George and Ringo, probably very close to bankruptcy, and John and Paul not that far behind. But yeah, why was this? Why was the biggest band in the world at this point close to bankruptcy? Well, it's because the government, Harold Wilson's government, had introduced a super tax of 95%, and the Beatles fell into this super tax band. So basically all their money, 95% of what they was making at the time, was going to the taxman. Now, after the Beatles learned that their high earnings had put them into this super tax band, they were absolutely enraged, and rightly so. The government, Harold Wilson, he had been personally involved with the band. He'd given them MBEs. He'd somewhat used them maybe with his political advantage to get young people to vote for him, and now they'd been put in this super tax band. Yeah, they were naturally all annoyed, and George in particular was absolutely livid by this, and it would inspire him to write a song. So by this point in 1966, George was now starting to fully develop as a songwriter,
Whilst he wasn't yet on the same level as what Lennon and McCartney was in terms of the quality of his compositions, he was starting to get a lot better, and he would write most of Taxman on his own, but he would need a little bit of assistance. Now, he would go to Lennon to get this assistance. Lennon would later claim that George at that point, he couldn't go to McCartney because Paul would just flat out refuse to help him, and Lennon as well didn't want to help him, but he felt sort of guilt-tripped into doing so. So Lennon would help him by contributing some of the backing vocals on the song. John's contribution to the song would be writing the lines that would directly name Harold Wilson and Ted Heath. Harold Wilson, obviously the Prime Minister. Ted Heath was leader of the opposition at the time and Tory leader. Now, this was a pretty bold move by the band because up until this point, they'd never named any living people in any of their songs, and they'd never done a political song either, which is what Taxman was. But in this song, here we have them naming the two leaders of the two main parties in Britain, Ted Heath of the Tory party and Harold Wilson of the Labour Party, and the latter of which had just given the Beatles MBEs not so long before, less than a year before this, and now they're attacking the very man who gave them these awards. Now, it wasn't just the fact that the Beatles were getting their earnings taken off them that annoyed George, it was also what the government were then doing with this money. They were basically using that money to then manufacture weapons and fund wars all around the world. And George would vent this frustration in his interview for How a Beatle Lives with Maureen Cleave for the Evening Standard. Each Beatle did their interview with Maureen, and most of George, Paul and Ringo's their interviews have kind of been forgotten in time. John's made quite an impact though. That was when he said that the band were more popular than Jesus. And he was right, but that's a story for another day. So on April 20th, 1966, the Beatles entered Abbey Road Studios, or EMI Studios as it was known then, to begin work on Taxman. Now, during this day's session, they would record 4 takes of the song. However, only 2 of these takes were complete takes, and all of them were just instrumentals. Now, by the end of this day's session, George was not happy with any of the takes, and nothing would be used from this day's sessions going forward. So the following day, April 21st, 1966, the Beatles would continue work on Taxman. They would record a further 11 takes this day. However, only the last take would actually include any vocals on it, so take 11, as it was known, would become the basis of the song, the one that they would start adding overdubs to. So for take 11, Harrison would play rhythm guitar, McCartney would play bass, and Starr would play drums. Harrison would also double track his lead vocal, and McCartney would play the guitar solo for the song, and this would be overdubbed onto the track, along with some tambourine by Ringo and backing vocals by Lennon and McCartney. Take 11 would also feature a counting from McCartney that would be left on the finished track. The backing vocals at this stage didn't feature the Mr. Wilson and Mr. Heath lines, and instead featured Lennon and McCartney singing Anybody Got Any Money. Now, by the end of this day's session, Taxman, it wasn't far off being complete, but it wasn't quite there yet. However, if you want to hear what it sounds like at this stage, well, good news, you can. You can hear it on both Anthology 2 and you can hear it on 2022 Super Deluxe Edition of Revolver. I nearly said the White Album there, force of habit, eh? But yeah, basically this take is nothing spectacular. It doesn't really sound all that different from the finished version, except it hasn't got the Mr. Wilson and the Mr. Heath lines. It's instead got John and Paul singing really fast. Anybody got any money? Anybody got any money? Like that, and it's really annoying. So the following day, April 22nd, 1966, more work would continue on Taxman, believe it or not. We are talking about Taxman here. So during this day's session, Ringo would start off by overdubbing some cowbell onto the song, and then Lennon and McCartney would replace the previous day's backing vocals with the Mr. Wilson and Mr. Heath lines. And just like that, most of the work on Taxman was now complete. All that was really left to do now was to mix the song. Now, the band would make their first attempt, along with George Martin, to mix the song on May 16th, but they wouldn't be happy with any of these mixes, so it would be scrapped, and none of those mixes would have ever been released. So it would be on June 21st of 1966 when the final session for Taxman would take place. Now, going into this session, George had been very happy with Paul's guitar solo for the song. As a side note, I don't actually know why Paul played the solo on this song rather than George. It just seems a bit out of the blue that Paul played it instead of George, especially when it's a George song, but I don't know, it's never really been said why Paul played it instead of George. But anyway, George was very happy with Paul's solo in the middle of the song, but he also felt that it would be good to have the solo repeated at the end of the song. So to start off in this day's session, George had Paul record the guitar solo again, so that this time it could be added to the end of the track, and you can hear it on the finished song. It's what's the closing, the last closing few seconds of the song. It's Paul playing the solo again. That was recorded on this day's session. Anyway, after that, now all the stuff for the song was recorded, and the band would attempt to mix the song along with George Martin, and good news, they successfully mixed it. So with that, Taxman was finished and it was ready to go. So Revolver would be released on August 5th of 1966, and Taxman would serve as the album's opening track. Now, as I mentioned, this is the only Beatles album that ever opened with a George Harrison song, and it's the first time the Beatles ever did a political song. So if Harold Wilson had hoped, given the band MBEs, would sort of get the youth on side, get the band on side, then surely Taxman would shatter any hope of that, because once the young fans heard this song, well, they'd be thinking, oh, we're not going to support him if this is what he's doing to the Beatles. Now, the Beatles themselves would never play Taxman live. In fact, they didn't play anything live off Revolver ever. But George would eventually play this song live in 1991 on that co-headline tour he did of Japan with Eric Clapton. Now, for this version that he did in the 90s, he changed the Mr. Wilson and Mr. Heath lines so that they were updated with the then contemporary politicians. So John Major and I'm guessing Neil Kinnock would be the two who got names, although I think he also started singing about George Bush and other world leaders at the time. And he also added more lyrics. He added an entire new bridge to the song with additional lyrics. Something, I can't remember exactly what they are, but it's stuff like, if you put on weight, I'll tax you fat, and stuff like that. Yeah, it's nothing spectacular, the additional lyrics, but yeah, it's cool to hear anyway, additional lyrics added. Taxman is a fantastic song and I absolutely love it, and you're going to hear me say this about most songs on Revolver because I really like Revolver. But yeah, this is a brilliant opening track. Everything about it is great. It's just got straight in with a punchy bass line. Yeah, it's just really in your face. It's a political song and it must have been pretty edgy stuff at the time when this song was first released on the album. Now, I think that this song, along with George's other two songs on Revolver, are the first truly great songs that he ever penned. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Don't Bother Me, I Need You, You Like Me Too Much, If I Needed Someone, etc. But I think these three songs, and particularly Taxman, are his first truly great songs, and it's the first time really that the world is truly beginning to realise that the Beatles have a third great songwriter in their ranks. He's not quite at Lennon McCartney's level yet, but trust me, in 2 years' time he will be. Now, when you do a political song, you're kind of playing with fire a little bit, because what can happen, as often the case with political songs, is they'll age, they'll date. Think of stuff like Give Ireland Back to the Irish by Wings. Most of John Lennon's Sometime in New York City album, they've aged, they're dated songs now. Whereas this isn't, because Tax still is as relevant today as it was back then. The only thing that's really aged about this song is the Mr. Wilson and Mr. Heath lines. We'll change that now to Mr. Starmer and... who's the Tory leader now? Miss Badenoch. Yeah, can't be Badenoch now, innit? Yeah, that'll be it now. Ha ha, Mr. Starmer, etc, etc. Gone off the tangent there. Can we also just appreciate Paul McCartney's bass line on this song? It properly drives it. It's the first song really the Beatles ever did where the bass is very much the driving force of it, I suppose. Although technically there's the fuzz bass and think for yourself. But just the bass line on this, the bum bum ba dum bum 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 ba. Just that bass, it's incredible. So incredible, in fact, the Jam would nick it on their song Start. And if you listen to Start, if I can, and there's no copyright issues, I'll play you a little bit of it. How the hell they didn't get sued by Apple for pretty much breaching, pretty much lifting and nicking that bass line, I don't know, but they didn't, they got away with it. And yeah, Start is also a great song, but Taxman's better. Good old McCartney and his bass lines, eh? Now, I'm not going to say this in every episode of the series because it only needs said once. It's not really got anything to do with Taxman either. It's more about Revolver as a whole, and I just thought I'd say it now and get it out of the way since it's the first episode. But it must have been pretty incredible to be a teenager when this album came out, to be a young person when this album came out, because in the space of the same week, you had Revolver coming out and you had England winning the World Cup. I mean, as far as being an English young person at that time, it don't really get much better than that. It's incredible. As a side note, another little Revolver fact for you here. It was originally going to be called Abracadabra, but they changed it to Revolver. Because, you know, Revolver, it's what a record does, you know. That's why it's called Revolver. All right. Anyway, Taxman sets things off brilliantly, and guess what? There's still another 2 George songs to come on the album, which is kind of unheard of. I mean, the only Beatles album that has more George songs than this is the White Album, and that's got 4 on, but that's a double album. I mean, how he got 3 songs? He normally got 2 on an album, so how he got 3 on this one, I don't know, but we'll discuss the other 2 later in this series. So that concludes this first episode of Revolver In-Depth. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please do like the video, comment, all that jazz, subscribe if you're not already subscribed and you enjoyed it. I would greatly appreciate it, thank you. Yeah, like I say, this is going to be a series like the White Album one I did, so I will be doing all the other tracks on the album plus a single from the time. So if you like this and you want to see the future episodes, well, there will be a playlist on my channel called Revolver In-Depth. where you can see this episode, which you've already seen, but you'll see all the future episodes in there as well. And while you're there, if you didn't see my White Album series, that playlist is also there, the White Album In-Depth, with 32 thrilling episodes for you to watch. Anyway, that is all for now, but join me next time where we will be asking a question about where all the lonely people come from. Till then though, do take care.